like, and this is what I'm saying. Ohio State is like the U.S. Armed Forces. Air, ground, sea, offense, defense, special teams. That's a Heisman Trophy candidate on the left. 6 carries, 25 yards. 25 yards. Then you click over on the right. That's a freshman with number 7, albeit a redshirt freshman. The first ball he threw was the first game of this season. 432 yards against the number 7 team in the country. And then full transparency, one of the worst pass defenses in the country, and they took advantage. But he had more touchdowns than incompletions. And then if you drop down with those 3 names, looks like a law firm, Olave, Wilson, and Smith and Jigba. Their nickname campus is Earth, Wind, and Fire. So, which is an old school band. Maybe
yeah, it's a great movie. Great movie.
You're hip to it. So, but Petty, look at these guys right here. Because you've been in a high volume offense like this with Coach Bryles, you've had guys, you look around your receiving room and you guys all grin at each other like, listen, they're going to decide who gets the ball. Once you get it, take off with it. The weaponry that Ohio State has, it's an advantage. All 3 of those guys could go to other top 10 programs and be the number 1 guy. What does it say about Ohio State when you start to look at potential playoff teams? We're just going to start spinning this forward against Bama, even against the White Walkers. They got answers that don't quit. Normally, you would just double the 1, but 1, 2, and 3 are really they're all the same, really, in terms.
And here's the thing, though, George, is 4, 5, 6, and 7
are killers.
Would all be number 1s, 2s, or 3s.
That's also true.
95%, and 95% of college programs across the country.
That's also true.
They already have one down in Tuscaloosa too.
And you got and yes, right. The Alabama's top 2 receivers is the 4th guy that came down from Columbus.
He was the odd man out.
Yeah, and should have stuck. There was plenty on the table for you to get you a little something, but I feel it. He's in the playoff regardless. But to Hack's point, Marvin Harrison's son hanging around. He gets in the game in the second half, makes a couple of little cameos, 5 catches for like 90 yards, just something quiet. They got 2, 3, 4 other kids. But that receiver room, what is that like in practice? But to the original question, Bryce, that kind of weaponry and that kind of play caller in Ryan Day, aren't these guys pretty much set to do anything against anybody?
I mean, yeah. I think those guys knowing when they're walking in, to watch film, go out to practice, you already know Hack, Trevor, George too. I mean, those guys in a locker room in college do everything together. What's really interesting to me is how Ryan Day sprinkles them in this offense all at the same time, because even though those dudes do everything together, in the locker room, go out to eat, movies, whatever, on the field, they're like, hey, I want mine. And we've seen that on Sundays. We see that. I mean, egos, that's what makes those guys so much fun to be around. And then as a quarterback, you're like, damn, man, I got to get this guy involved because he's going to start throwing, some shit on the sidelines before too long. So what's really crazy is when you look at these 3 cats, for Ohio State, and then even 4, 5, and 6 that have left. And then you also have, 8, 9, and 10 in high school right now that they're doing the same thing in high school that they're about to be doing at the shoe. You got what is this? This is 24 catches between the 3 of them today, 360 some odd yards and 5 touchdowns. Like, regardless,
Dagan, could you put the stat board up again, Dagan, real quick? Keep going, Bryce.
Because you have to keep going. Like a stat board, you have to actually extend the stat board on this, because that's so dumb. Because the thing is, to your point, George, they still had 200 on the ground.
Yep.
That's what's so nuts to me. They almost had 700 yards against a top 7, or a top 10 team and number 7 team in the country, Michigan State, who just beat what we were talking about as a really good Michigan State team coming up at for the game next week. So what Ryan Day is doing now as opposed to what might have happened in week 3 against Oregon, which we've already talked about. What I think is funny is, man, that if you guys are real football fans out there watching us, and I know we are on this podcast, whatever, but Aaron Rodgers is sitting there after the game after they got smacked by the Saints in week 1 going, guys, if we're really talking about this in week 1, like we got bigger problems. Green Bay's 8-2 and the first in the North right now. That's what this maturity of football, when you know that you are a good team, you just got to figure each other out. That's what happens. And so we are seeing Ohio State right now play it as a high of a level offensively as I've seen in a really long time for really any team. And to have an 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid leading it the way that he's leading it just shows you how much him and Ryan Day have really meshed. And I think that Ryan's calling a game that he can really excel in and he's comfortable in, regardless of how bad Michigan State's defense is statistically this year. Doesn't matter. That is not routes on air. And all of us know that even routes on air is still hard. Like, I mean, shit, man, at my pro day, George, I think I had 2 incompletions, but still that's no rush. That's like you've practiced that for weeks and it's still hard to do. And so, tack on another 11 guys on the other side of the field, the crowd and everything else. So what they did today was really, really impressive.
To that impressiveness, Trevor, you got to tip your hat to Ryan Day and to Corey Dennis. And I don't think his name gets said enough. I've known him since he was like a student assistant there at Ohio State. And then he moved over to something else and something else and something else. And now he's the quarterback coach. He's been there through all these rock star quarterbacks. Corey Dennis is the quarterback coach. Between Dennis and Day, these guys are equal parts dangerous, air and ground. And they got a true freshman as a running back who they developed to go out there and get 150, 200 yards. Then you throw Master Teague behind him. Then you throw the Avengers out there at wide receiver. Then you got the junior Avengers walking around the building waiting for their chance. Then you got 4 of the top 7 wide receivers in high school football committed to Ohio State. Style of ball, winning, and then who's the quarterback? All their quarterbacks keep going up into the NFL. That's one point. That's one point. They create green grass throws. Look how many throws CJ Stroud in that 32 or 35, how many of them are green grass? So I'm not taking from CJ. I'm just complimenting the offense. He knows where to go, but there's no conflict. He's not squeezing
George,
the – yeah.
I think the big one of the big things is with those weapons, I don't know a freaking defense that's going to sit there and go, yo, let's man these guys up. Let's get in their grill and try with those weapons, they're not going to do that. So you have the luxury of seeing zone, right? And now these guys are like, damn, dude, I don't have to worry about getting off a press. I got all the time in the world. I got to work my routes. So like when you have that many weapons, it puts an advantage to you. And like all those guys in that receiver room should be looking at each other and be like, yo, dude, if you eat, I'm going to eventually start eating. And it's just going to keep trickling down. And that's why I said, I think that team is so deep. It's like really, it's hard to defend them when you have that many options. It's just, you have to like pray to God CJ just does something wrong. I mean, really is what happened.
Deflate gate.
Which is a great point. So for those of you rolling with us right now, what Hack is talking about is dictating terms. So some offenses take the field and they are in fear mode or defensive mode as an offense. Man, we got to block all this up and we got to find a place to get the ball out of here before the wall falls in. That's like a defensive mindset on offense. And what he's talking about is dictating terms. You can dictate it by pace. You could dictate it by talent. Ohio State's really doing both. And they force you as a defense and they let you know what you can do or what you can't do just by how they approach business. So, Trevor, air or ground, green grass throws by talent and scheme, and they never hurt themselves. Michigan State had like 3 or 4 fumbles and turnovers in the first half that were immediately cast in for touchdowns. The Buckeyes just don't do that. like they're both in attack mode and they're very vanilla in terms of like protecting their backside. Day, Dennis, Stroud, who's a first-time player, like, what do you give to the level of development? And you've been at 2 Power 5 big-time programs, and you've seen how they build this stuff from the ground up. What does it say about the Buckeyes and their process and how they keep, like, eviscerating heavyweight opponents?
Well, we can go back to the beginning here. They've figured out the method of recruiting. I had the opportunity to throw with Garrett Wilson when he was a senior in high school prior to going off to Ohio State. He's from Lake Travis High School, where Baker Mayfield and some of these other guys went to school, in the Texas Hill Country, right down the road from Texas, got recruited everywhere. And where did he want to go play? He wanted to go play at The Ohio State University. So that tells me when Ryan Day is sitting inside of a living room, he is preaching something that these other coaches aren't. Their recruiting coordinator there at Ohio State is picking out young men that not only are talented, but they have a level of maturity that when they get on campus, they can come in and they can contribute first and foremost. But then they can also bring the young guys behind them and teach them how to be a pro. You look at a Garrett Wilson, you look at the way that's
such a good point.
That wide receiver room sits there together. To Bryce's point, a lot of those wide receivers have egos. And whether it's your head coach, whether it's the guys in that room, or whether it's your quarterback, somebody's got to bring those guys together. I think the communication between Ryan Day and CJ Stroud of, hey, let's manage these guys in a way where they're all happy. Let's dial up plays to get them all the ball. So across the board, we're happy. And then for a young guy, CJ Stroud, to ingest that, go out there with the other million things going on in his head and actually turn that into fruition, what happens on game day, and only have 3 incompletions, get all these guys touches. That's culture. That's just not checkers. And I think it starts all the way back when he's sitting in the living room with these guys.
That's a killer point. And Hack and Bryce, you guys know this. Trevor hit on something, and he hit on it last week, and he hit on it the last time. They're plucking not just these 5-star gems from all over the country. Like CJ Stroud's from out here with us. He's right from LA. Garrett Wilson's from Texas. Maturity and toughness to go with that 5-star gem. Wouldn't they love to have that in Austin, Texas, or Gainesville, Florida, or Tallahassee? Like, look at all these blue blood, we used to be at one point monster programs who still kind of get talent, but the talent comes in, they're not tough. Or they still can pluck the average occasional 5-star, but they're not mature enough. And yet Ohio State, how often do you hear about their kids? How often do you see drama? Like, they had the kid that walked off or whatever. Looks like an anomaly because these dudes are just like, oh man, that's too bad. On to business. Like, they didn't even like pause for that linebacker that did that. And then here they go, setting themselves up, rebounded off the Oregon game. And they rebounded not just by like getting wins. They are eviscerating everybody. They are taking the approach that your Bearcats took today, but should have been taken all season. It's just, honestly, I'm curious if Ohio State automatically goes to 2 with a couple of number 1 votes.